Okay, so hello everyone. I'm back, and this is something I've wanted to talk about for a while. And I think that I don't know how I'm going to title this because I don't want a lot of people to click on it to hear me be critical of other people. But I do, of course, want to title it something that so people know what they're clicking, or else I'll just put like a period. But like, okay. So lately, I've been reflecting, and I don't watch a lot of TV. Many of us don't watch a lot of TV. We watch a lot of YouTube, Netflix, whatever, streaming sites, content creators, and stuff like that. So I've realized that from my time watching on YouTube, I've seen people grow and change a lot. Like you all have seen me grow and change, but hopefully I've remained consistent and I don't rationalize things that don't make sense. So like, for example, there are some YouTubers on here and they're pretty big YouTubers. Like they grow, the people who grow particularly fast, I see them say things that contradict so many things. Like, and it's like, it's not even contradict, but then sometimes it's just flat out mean. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And you get to see humans in this mode of hysteria almost. So the one thing that comes to mind is this YouTuber called Angelicaoles. So I started watching her channel when she made videos of like YouTubers who fell off, because this is my way of seeing of hearing I guess learning about YouTubers outside of my bubble. So when I first came across her channel, I was like, okay, this is like a pretty good series. You get to see how some YouTubers became so big that they became less self-aware, and they had this inflated sense of ego, and how they have this entitlement over just views and money, basically. So I thought that was good. And as her channel started to get bigger, she started to do different things, like talking about more commentary, more drama. And recently she's been talking about Gabby Hanna a lot. Gabby Hanna is someone she came from Vine. She's a YouTuber. She's someone who's like a typical white kind of privileged YouTuber. She doesn't make content that I watch at all, really. Every now and then, every now and then I go to her channel to see what she's talking about, what she's about. But Angelicaoles specifically makes a lot of videos basically critiquing almost her every move now. And I think Gabby Hanna is not someone who is flawless. Like, there's a bunch of things that she does that is not perfect. But at the same time, I don't think it warrants someone making videos about it all the time. Like, commentary channels have this inflated sense of ego that they are the checks and balances of YouTube, which doesn't make sense. Like, if you try to think of YouTube in three branches of government, and our three branches of government is not perfect, but if you try to think of it like that, you have the YouTube CEO administration team, then you have the YouTubers itself, the popular YouTubers, and then you have commentary channels who are somehow supposed to keep track of everything going on and hold people accountable, which that doesn't make any sense. Like, you don't have people who actually are checking the commentary channels, and then if you do that, that becomes a lucrative form of bullying or critique, or a sense of, it becomes lucrative, and it loses its legitimacy. So this channel, sometimes I'm listening to her speak and I'm like, you don't even know. And it's the audience as well. And it's the people in the comments that validate these people. And it's like, you don't even know that what you're saying is dismissive. What you're saying is contradictory. What you're saying is bullying. That at one point I blocked her channel because I was like, I don't even want to see this coming up on my screen because I think she's a bully. And that is in some way an unpopular opinion. And I'm not even going to glorify that whole unpopular opinion thing, because that has lost its sense of sense in itself. Like, the way people make unpopular opinions for almost anything that doesn't even make sense is crazy to me. So all of these things I've been noticing, but her channel specifically speaks to a lot of it, because I'm like, okay, I understand this woman, Gabby Hanna, has, scammed her audience by promoting a product that didn't come through like many other YouTubers do, and they don't get the same energy. I understand she produces content that is kind of subpar and dramatic, whether it's like a video or a physical book or whatever. I understand that she plays the victim. I understand that she wasn't a good friend, and she was was friends or is friends with someone who committed sexual assault, like many of us. So I think at some point at my big age, I'm starting to notice that a lot of the things that people are preaching on this website, they don't check in real life. And that's what's kind of getting to me. I understand the value of people saying, okay, this is YouTube, so we need to be the people who check YouTubers or whatever. I get it. But like, you need to be connecting that to real life constantly so people don't get wrapped up in this website. The amount of people who are sexual assault apologizers, are friends with people who have committed sexual assault, are friends with people who they don't even know committed a sexual assault, is like a large amount of people. 1 in 4 women are likely to be sexually assaulted before they reach 18. 1 in 6 boys are likely to be sexually assaulted before they reach 18. Like, these are like statistics that people are starting to find out more. So that means who are committing these acts of sexual assault on people. And yes, it could be some of the similar people, but it's also people that we don't like to properly hold accountable. So a lot of times, you know, that's what frustrates me about YouTube, is that there are people like holding people accountable for things that, like, on the grand scheme of things don't matter. And I would love to see this energy be put into like actual substantial change. But I understand that YouTube is supposed to be like an escape from what's going on in the world. My nose is running. I have to get my tissue. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about with this channel as well, Angelicaoles channel, is that she is a pretty young white woman in the UK. I believe the UK. And there's been a few occasions where I've seen her channel and she kind of dismissed race, but then there's other times where she is a champion for like race and gender and making sure people don't discriminate, but at the same time doesn't do a good job at knowing like what marginalization is, what racism actually is and looks like, especially systemically. So it's like when people start to go on their channel and they say things like, oh, all because you're a person of color doesn't mean that you always get to like, you know, talk negatively about white people or whatever. It's just like certain things, like it'll be something similar to that, like, but then in another video saying, you know, you cannot just discriminate against black people or trans people. Like, these things sound good, and it's so many people who are saying these short sound bites of things that sound good and contradict themselves in other ways, and they're losing the critical pieces because they're fairly just not being challenged in a way that they'll accept, and they're ignorant to it too. And I think, and it's not like I am necessarily mad at this person, but it frustrates me that this is like content that people really enjoy. And I think when I'm like a minority within the United States, but then I'm also in a minority group of people who have this opinion against this person, mainly because I'm older, and maybe in some of my education. But at the same time, of course, it's so frustrating when people do get a certain education and they still don't understand these things. So that's that person. But then also, when you think of people like women on The Real, I watch The Real on YouTube, like the small clips. Every now and then, I've never seen it on TV. I've never sat through a full episode of it, so I only see like the 4 to 5 minute clips of their show. And I don't want to say that's completely representative of their whole show. Of course not. I think the things that I don't watch from their show, or maybe when they do giveaways, like I don't know what the point of The Real is. Like, is it a show where you have women of color, majority light-skinned women of color, talking at a table about social gossip, like, you know, regular gossip? Is it just a gossip daytime show? Is it supposed to be political? Because they dig into sometimes, you know, racial, societal issues. Is it supposed to be a show about like tips and tricks and hacks? Like, what is it supposed to be? Because when you think of The View, The View talks about like various issues. They talk about like lifestyle and stuff like that. But they also, I think they're really known for like their political issues. Like, they will go in on political things and have, whether it's right or not, like that's kind of like their bread and butter. Like you go to that show to see what these women are thinking about political things. To my knowledge, I don't watch The View that much, but that's something that I get from their clips on YouTube. That's something I get from them when they go viral. A lot of times The Real goes viral because of ways they misspoke about race, gender, or certain topics. So it's like, is that going to be your thing? Like when you talk about race and gender poorly? And I think it's like, for example, Adrian. I think Adrian's a great person, so I'm just literally critiquing. But the times where we are talking about race and she slips in, well, all people or all, a lot of women go through that because as a white Latinx person, which she is because she did her ancestry and she was over 50% European in her ancestry, she says things like that. And I understand you are, a Latinx person who grew up in the hood. So you feel like you're Black adjacent and you understand what Black people go through. So you say because other Latinx people were in these experiences, you relate it to all people when people decide to call out how Black people experience the world because you have lived experience similar. That doesn't mean you equate it. So because she does little things like that and that's not called out properly, it's not giving the audience nuance to what life is like. Then you have someone like Tamara, who is biracial, who her children, hopefully she doesn't consider her children Black because one, her son physically doesn't look Black, so he'll never have a Black experience. And then her daughter, she looks ambiguous. She still doesn't look like a Black woman, will probably never have a Black experience. So these people are not Black because, ancestry, less than 25% ancestry should not mean that you are, necessarily trying to identify as a Black person. I think somehow as we get into history, we have to equate who is Black. So I hope, we've never had those tough conversations on the screen. Tamara does look like a Black ambiguous person, so she's going to have that experience. But I feel like it would be great for her to do more research and talk about, the biracial experience, biracial representation, and actually talk about that on the show as it relates to certain issues that they bring up. And then you have Lonnie, who does represent, plus size, dark-skinned women, and physically, but then when she speaks, it's 1 minute she's caping for Black women and how we are disproportionately marginalized in society, but then there's moments where she's like, well, all women, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. And there's sometimes where she does throw Black women under the bus because she's not doing the work to make sure she creates nuance in her conversations. And I bet you these women, they wake up really early, they have to tape a lot, so I understand you might not have the stamina to do so, but you owe it to the millions of people watching to give them something of substance. Then you have the new addition, who is, what's it called? Why am I forgetting her name? Amanda Seals. She is pretty smart. She's a smart person, and she's demonstrated that a lot in her work before this show. But then at the same time, you have people who do criticize her on maybe lacking nuance when it comes to colorism. I don't know. I think the critiques of Amanda Seals mainly go to her big personality rather than her knowledge. Even though I've seen people critiquing some of the things that she said that was wrong, which is okay. I think there's times where people are going to say things that are wrong, but I think we have to make sure that when they do say things that are wrong, we give people a way to kind of correct themselves without banishing them for life. So the verdict for me is still up on Amanda Seals. I don't know that much, especially from her on the show. I feel like her on the show has made Lonnie less problematic so far. They really haven't gone back and forth on anything that much. But then you have Jeannie. I'm just really not a fan of Jeannie. I know sometimes when I read the comments, people are a fan of Jeannie. I think Jeannie knows she's very smart, especially when it comes to mental health and just self-work. But at the same time, I think she uses that as an excuse to participate in just problematic things. Do I think biracial dating is problematic? No. But I think once you reach a level of knowledge and who you want to be in life and you rationalize interracial dating in a way, it just kind of creates this cognitive dissonance for me. There is no way that, it's very difficult for me to be someone who is, a Black woman, but then also I'm very pro Black people and in Black liberation in ways that don't always yield for a white people to be in my sphere all the time. So or just anyone who's not black or anyone who's lighter, because I understand that when you're on this lighter spectrum, it goes down to colorism. Like darker people are always going to be at the bottom of the totem pole, whether they're black or not, a black American or not, to be specific. So the fact that Jeannie can constantly hear how black men are the demise of black women, and that's true statistically in many ways when it comes to domestic violence, when it just comes to not even, supporting us in situations where we are asking for help. And then you date a black man, it's kind of like, okay, so like, are you an ally of black women? Are you critiquing that? Are you doing the work for black women to kind of date a black man and figure him out and make sure he isn't problematic and capes for black women? Is that like a savior complex? Do you understand, like, yes, the problematic things you said in the past about like having black men on the side and always like almost basically borderline fetishizing them on TV? Do you now rationalize those things to be like, okay, I can be with a black man now because I've checked those things, but this is kind of like the vibe I want? Because a lot of people date black men not because of anything intrinsically like they do differently, like their brains or whatever. It's because they want this exterior. They want this dark exterior. They want this person with this culture. And it's not necessarily because they just want a man in their life. And I think that's similar for a lot of people. So I'm not necessarily blaming her for it. But it's like the ability to she probably knows some of these things now and still go for that public relationship with a black man, especially a rapper. I think it's very strange. It's very strange. Yes, it's her private life, but at the same time, it's something that we've been a part of that journey for and we knew was inevitable, especially after her divorce. So I definitely think she's not a perfect person. She definitely does some of the things Adrienne does when it's like, okay, all people. But she's getting better at sound bites to make it seem like she is an actual ally. But this is me being hypercritical. So, and it's one of those things where it's very frustrating that these people can get a platform to kind of not help guide the public. They're not teaching us. They're not necessarily, they're teaching. They every now and then they say vote and maybe participate in local politics, but they're not saying how do we actually work on dismantling a system of oppression? How do we as individuals take agency for learning? How do we as individuals take agency for showing up for things that actually will make a change? So it's like that's where I'm headed in life, and it sucks that like when you do have people who consider themselves revolutionary for having all women of color on a panel, but we only have one dark-skinned woman, it doesn't make any sense. And then like the body shapes, they all like, Jeannie's more slim, but you have Tamara, who's kind of like representing for someone who's had like 2 children, especially having one a little older. So she has like her like, I think, average body type of like a woman in the United States. And then you have Lonnie, who is like plus size, so she is kind of representing, and I'm not saying that like flat out, I'm using air quotes because you don't need just one person plus size to represent for everyone. I know there's different plus size shapes. And then you have Adrienne, she's just like a short person, and then you have Amanda, who is again pretty slim. So you don't have people who really fluctuate on just how they represent themselves. You have women who probably are like more average in the sense of white European beauty standards, as opposed to people who look in ways that will make you very uncomfortable. So we have this kind of false sense of diversity on the show. And that's kind of what frustrates me. And because they have YouTube clips is why I'm talking about it. So then as you go on YouTube, you have more and more like white commentary people. And I made a video on Angelicaoles' channel before because I think like her channel's fairly good, but you have a lot of other channels like Tiffany Ferg, Ready to Glare, people like that. Then you have these white guys. I think one is like Drew Gooden and like another guy's name is Alex. You have a lot of the rise of these white commentary channels who don't question why a bunch of them are white, talking about things, again, similar topics that seem to be critical, but in the grand scheme of things, and I'm taking Tiffany Ferg out of this at this point, but in the grand scheme of things, lack racial nuance. And if we're constantly going to say, going off of Joaquin Phoenix's speech, that the people who are benefiting from oppression have the job to dismantle it, they're not doing anything really. Really anything. And then you have people like For Harriet. I love her channel. She's doing great in my eyes. But these people, aren't doing similar things like her when they have the responsibility to do so. And this is not like a video or podcast talking about how, white people need to be more political on YouTube. But it's more about actually like saying, well, if in the whole wide world, if we're saying that the people who benefit from oppression need to do something at dismantling it, that means in all ways, shapes, or forms, we should be holding people accountable to that. Whether we're holding them accountable in the corporate world, in the government, and day-to-day micro interactions, that goes for online presence as well, and people are not doing that work. Oh, here's another guy, Curtis Connor. So again, you have like black people on YouTube doing both. You have them doing like superficial kind of commentary, then you have them doing really racial and political commentary, and you don't have the white people doing that. And the racial and political commentary could be why some of these black channels don't grow as big as theirs, because they have more of a responsibility to do the racial and political stuff, as to where white people, they're like, I'm just going to talk about like Harley Quinn today and make that a part of my month. Or I'm going to talk about this guy, Nikocado Avocado, for all these, videos, instead of actually addressing race. And then you have people like, what's her name? Keisha. It's Keisha. She's in the UK, and she's like, she's just this young black woman who's doing music, but she also talks about like fandoms. She does commentary, and every now and then she does like race content. And it's because she's black, not because she has a responsibility to necessarily do so, but because she's black. So, and then again, that like it takes a hit on your channel, your algorithm, your monetization because of that. And other YouTubers who are white don't recognize that responsibility. They like pat you on the back for it, but they don't take that hit as well. And then you have people who gaslight you, who are ignorant in the comments, and they don't know systematic racism and race. So then they gaslight these black YouTubers like, why do you have to make everything about race? All people go through this and blah, blah, blah. And it takes a hit on your psyche when you have to deal with people like that. And it's really not fair. It's not fair. And me personally, I always try to make sure my experience watching content is pretty good, but at some point it becomes out of my control. Like I can subscribe to the people I want to, I can do all these things, but then I'm still going to see certain things on my homepage that bother me. I'm going to see people on my homepage that bother me. And these are some of the people that come to my mind when I talk about topics like this. And I think something I've recently recognized, and I've said it publicly, like YouTube is kind of like my form of therapy. Like I need YouTube to talk. I need to talk. I need to be out there, because I don't talk and I'm not that out there in my regular life if I don't need to. Like I really try not to take up space. But on YouTube, social media, I try to take up a little bit more space. And I need to be more confident of that and do that more. And I think taking such a big break from YouTube, it's kind of like all these things have flustered around in my mind and I haven't really got a chance to say it. So now I'm saying it. And then, okay, this is another thing. Going back to Angelicaoles, and the reason why I was like, I need to get on camera and say something, because she mentioned how like Jaclyn Hill has been having a really hard month and blah, 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 and how people need to like kind of lay off of her. And it was so weird for her to say that when like Jaclyn Hill has proved to be a pretty divisive person. And I don't think she's like a bad person, but I think there's definitely something wrong with her when it comes to how she rationalizes things on camera and the business practices that she's dealt in, and how she's, the typical white woman when it comes to being completely ignorant and oblivious to anything and then cries when they get a chance. So, and then a typical capitalist as well. So when you get on your channel and you bully someone, in my opinion, like Gabby Hanna all the time, who is not like she deserves to be bullied, of course deserves to be held accountable and all that, blah, blah, blah. But when you bully someone like that and then say, we need to leave Jaclyn Hill alone, she's having a hard month, is like, okay, that just was it was really unsettling to me, because it showed that like she's doing mental gymnastics for some people. But yeah, like even on the terms of like Jaclyn Hill and people like Tana Mojo, I'm looking at this channel called Spill Sesh, who like will literally get on here and be like, oh my gosh, guys, like I feel so bad for this person and blah blah blah. And it's just like, what? You feel what? It's just like, and this content is viewed up a lot. These people are getting checks, checks. And I think people are starting to realize these gossip channels are not just trying to hold people accountable, they're trying to make money because they know that this false sense of accountability is going to draw you all in while also hearing about whatever gossip it is. Because at the same time, people want to hear the gossip and they want to feel like, oh, at the end of this, I'm going to learn like life skills or something of importance. Well, no, you're hearing about someone talk about Trisha Paytas and then you're hearing them say like Trisha Paytas is going through mental health issues, but we somehow need to let her know that this is not okay. And what? It's just like, this is all made up and fictional, especially when you start to realize that YouTube is entertainment. So people are going to play into things and it's just a cycle of non-reality. And I get some people want to escape their real life, so they come on this website to do so. But at the same time, there are people who legitimately are playing into this and some people who don't know and take this a little too serious. And I think that's where we need to break that cycle in a way of letting people know like, hey, there are real issues going on in this real world, while also being able to have fun on this website without spewing nonsense. Like, who is going to be the group of channels that call people out on spewing nonsense on this channel? Okay, you may be spewing nonsense to people who are like 9 to 15, but these people are like the future of the generation. Like, some people are going to take some of this serious, and we're not breaking a cycle of misinformation and violence and just capitalistic goals. So it's very, very strange to me, some of the things that have been going on these channels. And I look at it and like, I try to unfollow, I try to block, I try to do whatever. And it all eventually gets difficult to do. Especially one channel that, this is a black guy, this is DGs Channel. Every now and then I have to like re-block or ignore his channel because for some reason, and this is giving you an insight on some of the things that I see and watch, and sometimes it's almost like, it feels like you have no choice because it's like, it seems so tempting. But, and I'm like 22, so this is still all in my realm. But his channel is it's very entertainment based to a point where there are certain things that I just can't watch because I'm too old for it. But there was other things in the past that like just never made sense to me. Like, for example, when he was in a relationship with Kennedy, he would love her, put her in his videos or whatever. And then when he wasn't with her, it was like within few days he would find these other women to make videos with, whether or not he was romantically into them or not. She's even kind of talked about the double standard a little bit, but I don't know if she's like that critical to really call it out and talk about it in a video. And I don't know if that's ever a reason for their breakups, but for me it's so disrespectful because I feel like there's lines and boundaries that when you love someone, of course you don't want them to make you less productive in your work life, but you also have to figure out, how do I not fault this person that I love for my productivity, but I also love them enough to give them space to be who they are without me. Because two whole people should be in a relationship, and from social media I kind of see them as two whole people, but at the same time they let their differences, I feel like, really dictate how they are on social media with each other. And it's just really weird to watch. It's really weird to watch. And it's weird to watch, a woman, especially a black woman, kind of not know how to navigate this space with a black man. And he's even said it like, oh, like, I think Kennedy is like the first black girl he's dated, which is so weird to admit to people. Every time they break up, it's something where, he has this routine of trying to get views off the breakup, whether it's just promoting other women or actually talking about the breakup. And then she doesn't do that. Like, she usually goes on a break, or she just, makes videos as regular programming, which I see as way more respectful. And he doesn't see that, I feel like, as a way of like kind of throwing a black woman under the bus. And it's just really interesting to see that dynamic on a social media aspect and a younger aspect, like of like how, like what some people in their young 20s and late teens are going through, that they don't see these constant tropes being done. So I think that was hard for me to watch because I just couldn't see him doing that. I don't care about like his money or whatever. I think like it's great. Do you get your money, pursue your career. But seeing that dynamic between like a black man and a black woman publicly, I think is really jarring, and it's frustrating because I can't jump in and sit them down and be like, look what's happening, So that's that. What else do I see on my feed? I don't know. I think that's pretty much some of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about. Every time I think one channel that comes to mind that I see right now is Lovely TV. Her channel is really interesting because she is definitely giving a perspective of a type of black woman that I think many people have in our lives. Those kind of conservative women, like when I say conservative, I mean like politically, who probably might agree with some like moderate democratic ideals that lean towards conservatism, of like kind of holding black people accountable in disproportionate ways to where you would hold like white people accountable, like this idea of equality when we need equity. And I hear that in a lot of her language. And even she said some problematic things to me that probably is far from being pointed out because of you being drowned in her audience for probably being a hater. But it's like when this whole Jussie Smollett thing happened and she kept saying he was on the street looking for street meat and kind of playing into his sexuality in that way. And that just was very, 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 very problematic to me. I think we can call him out without saying things like that and being demeaning like that. And I've stopped watching her videos as much as I did because of some things like that. Like there are some things that she would say and joke about that I'm like, this is just not inclusive, and it's not being aware of people's social reality that you find this joke to be not funny, or this hot take you have is not actually a hot take. You're using this facade of being critical to be mean, and you're using this whole thing of unpopular opinions to be wrong. And that's what I'm hearing. Like, it's so frustrating. Even to me in my daily life, there's so many times where I'm like, wow, I'm working with people who literally graduated from college and are still grossly wrong and grossly irresponsible in the things that they say and do, and they're not producing work that would even get them a good grade in college, So it's just one of those things where it's almost like all of this is just, a lot of things are a performance, and it's a bad performance, and there's no one reviewing the performance from a critical lens, and the people who do that only do that in research. So for example, you have people who are really smart. They maybe under this facade of being really smart, they produce research, they do papers, they do articles, but there's this gap of people who only do that for hypotheticals and theories, and they may even do it for some real life investigative situations, and then that's it. They never try to work with real people currently going through things to figure things out and make sure they don't happen poorly again. It's like we live in a reactionary society and no one's doing the proactive work to make sure these things don't happen. And what I think is proactive work, and this is kind of like, I don't know if this is like my idiosyncrasy or like my theme, but I always bring this back to criminal justice and prison abolition. That is work that I think is more proactive, because if we are abolishing these systems of violence and political gain, which is a prison, we're abolishing that because it doesn't reduce crime, it doesn't deter crime. If we abolish that and make sure people are held accountable in programs and community ways, that will make sure we are preventing certain crimes from happening, but we have to do that in order to prevent the crimes from happening. If we never do that, we're never going to be preventing, and we're never going to be showing people how to not do these things. So that was my first thing. And so that's why I think we need to move into a more proactive way instead of being extremely reactionary and just trying to fight off whatever that is in that moment. And that's essentially what happens on YouTube. I think some people who do hold people accountable on YouTube are like, okay, well, we're holding this person accountable so other people won't do that. There is a little bit of that in there. There are some people who see, like, I don't know, there are some people who probably see people dying from, cigarettes who are like, okay, I'm not going to smoke cigarettes. So you do have some of those effects. You do have some people who like get dragged on Twitter for doing something. So they're like, I'm not going to do that. But the thing is, they're not going to do it on Twitter. They're going to still probably do it in their real life, or they're going to think those thoughts in their mind. So, for example, like when it comes to people who commit sexual assault, like I still don't think those people should be imprisoned in what we know as prisons now. I do think those people should be put in a space where they are able to recognize their crimes. There are so many people who commit sexual assault who will never say it because they're scared of going to prison or jail. If people felt more encouraged to admit to that act of violence, to know that they won't be banished, to know that they will get help to hopefully prevent someone else from doing it, I think we dramatically create another world where people aren't scared of confessing to the harmful things that they do, because they know that they won't be banished and brutalized, but they will also make sure that this will never happen again. Because I think a lot of times we think people who do something bad once will continue to do it. And those people, that small percent of people who do something bad and will continue to do it, maybe we find something else that is more permanent for them rather than subjecting everyone else that won't do it again to it. And I always try to do these videos and podcasts to an hour, but I just can't keep talking. So I think I'm just going to end my rant now. Hopefully you all will give me feedback. Hopefully I will find people from doing things like this who can add to my world. Because right now I'm feeling really, really just, I don't want to say, I'm just feeling really like I'm not getting the support that I need to make things better. I think a lot of people are depending on me to kind of be the person to look to for guidance, and there's no one just kind of creating this circle of healing and creation with me. So hopefully that these videos and podcasts won't make you say, I stand Tiana, I live by her every word, but here's how I can become a productive person and like work within her sphere equally like her. Or, something like that. Or give me feedback, critique me, be like, this is how you could have did that better, because that's what I'm always yearning for. And it helps me also not take things personally. Like, I'm the type of person, I take things really personal, but in order for me to not take things personal, I have to practice with not doing it. And I can't practice if nobody is like throwing shots, So, yeah, that's all I got to say. Let me get out of here. I have my mic on, so I'm happy about that. And I'm going to put this up, and I think I'm learning how to like upload these visuals faster because I have to like not lower the quality, but like compress it different on iMovie, like just select the option, whatever. All right, so I will see you all probably later because I think I'm going to do my makeup and like create some better stuff today. But yeah.